Chapter 2421. What's wrong? Can't I talk about this? There's no reason to bring up something from so long ago. The father and son started bickering. Waylon hugged Cameron by her shoulders and brought her away from the living room. Cameron laughed when they got to the garden. The two old men are so adorable. They're so different from you. Waylon squinted and looked at her while tilting his head. So different from us? Cameron turned to face him while walking backward. Do you bicker with your brother? No, the rowdy ones in your family are your sister and the two old men. If they weren't around, I think your home would be so quiet, unlike the Southern clan. Colton and Waylon would never be rowdy, and neither would Nolan and Maisie. Other than Daisy and the two elders, the rest of the Goldmans were just like them. Waylon stopped in his tracks and smiled. That's true. It really is livelier when great-grandpa and grandpa are around, but, he paused for a few seconds and raised his brows. If you want to add to that, we can have a few kids. Cameron turned away. You can have them yourself. Seeing how her ears had turned red, he smiled and walked closer. Can I request it? Shut up. She turned around and saw Noce and Daisy getting out of the car. Daisy smiled and waved at them. Brother. Sister-in-law. Cameron wasn't used to hearing Daisy call her sister-in-law. Waylon watched them walk over and gave Noce a quick glance. Your good news spread fast. Noce put his hand around Daisy's waist. You should catch up. Cameron frowned. Are you having a competition on who gets a baby sooner? They had just gotten married, and now they were being asked about having a baby. Waylon smiled. That's not what I meant. Cameron smirked and crossed her arms. But that's what's on your mind. Daisy couldn't help but smile, then held her arm. All right, let's ignore them. How is your father? Haven't seen him in a while, and I'm starting to miss him. Cameron smiled and answered, he's good, so don't worry, you'll see him one day. Waylon patted Noce's shoulder. I guess this conversation doesn't involve us. Do you want to take a walk? Noce nodded, so they left. After Daisy saw them walk away, she smiled and asked, I heard that you had your wedding on the East Islands? Cameron pressed her lips together. My father wanted it. We wouldn't have had it so soon if it weren't because he was pushing us. She looked down at Daisy's belly. But you're pregnant so quickly. Daisy paused and smiled. It was a surprise. I didn't expect it to happen so soon either. They were unprepared. Will you stop acting after this? Daisy was stumped. Cameron looked at her. A lot of artists leave the spotlight for a few years after getting pregnant during their prime. When they return, they are a lot less popular. Do you think you're ready for that? After a long pause and contemplation, Daisy said, Don't worry. As long as I can still get roles, there's nothing to worry about. She didn't care about her popularity. All she needed was her acting skills. Only celebrities who had to rely on their popularity would worry about that, but actors would still be actors after they came out of retirement. Chapter 2422. Cameron suddenly chuckled. That's not bad. I thought you would give up your dreams after getting pregnant. Daisy smiled. We don't live for our children, and neither should they. We're all individuals. Life is too short, so if I give up on a career I love because of my child, my life will be meaningless. Cameron smirked. But Noce and the Goldmans have money. It would be able to cover your expenses for a few lifetimes. Even if she gave up on her career and stayed home doing nothing, she wouldn't have to worry about anything. That was a life that most people wanted. Why else would people want to marry into rich families? They were all eyeing that comfort. Daisy beamed. No way. I can't just use my family's money. I would feel bad for Nolly. Cameron smirked. Did she just get a slap on her face? But she finally understood why Noce would care so much about Daisy. It was because Daisy's heart was full of him. How could a woman who would take risks with him without caring about her own safety not be the person he cared for the most? Meanwhile, at a restaurant, Leah went on a blind date with someone her family had introduced her to. She only went because she didn't have a choice. She slowly picked up her water cup when she heard the requirements and conditions. I will not give up my career to marry you. I'm sorry. The man paused and frowned. You are an interpreter and have to travel most of the time. I have to stay here and take care of my mother. It would be no different from living separately. Since when do marriages where the couple doesn't see each other a lot last? The man continued. I make $90,000 a year, more than enough to take care of you. Even if you're young, you have to marry sooner or later, no? After she heard what he said, she raised her brows and said with a poker face, I'm the only child in the Young family. Even if I don't get married, my family will still take care of me. My parents wish for me to marry an outstanding man, but not a man who thinks he's outstanding. The man's face dropped. You say that I think I'm outstanding. You're a woman in her late 20s. If it weren't for your family, do you think any man would be interested in you? You'll be lucky to even get married. Leah smiled. I'm sorry then. Even if I have to get married, it won't be with you. The man slammed the table and yelled, Do you think I want to marry you? You arrogant woman. I'm sure you've been used by many men. Leah splashed the cup of water on his face. Everyone who heard the commotion looked around. Before the man could react, she slammed the cup down. You can't even respect women. Only the blind would marry you. Chapter 2423. You threw water in my face. The man lost his temper and was going to hit her, but he was stopped before his hand went down. He angrily looked back. Mind your own. Zafir grabbed his wrist so he couldn't move. Are you sure you want to hit a woman in public? The man realized everyone was staring at him, so he clenched his jaw, clicked his tongue, and left. Leah looked at Zafir. Why are you here? He calmly replied. I was having a meal with some business partners and saw you. Leah picked up her bag. Thanks. Don't mention it. Zafir left the restaurant with Leah while he left Zoe drinking with two men by herself. Zoe couldn't drink anymore, but seeing Zafir wasn't coming back, she wanted to find an excuse to leave. The men didn't want to let her go. One of them held her shoulder. Mr. Gosling said you would stay and spend time with us, but you're leaving? Zoe froze. What do you mean? Don't you want to be the female lead? As long as, the man leaned in and whispered something into her ear while holding her waist. Zoe stood up reflexively. I'm his woman. He wouldn't do that, the man scoffed. Do you think he is interested in you? Given his background, he will have a marriage of convenience with someone from an affluent family. You're just an entertainer. What value can you bring to the Gosling family? Zoe shook in anger while her face turned pale. The man pulled her into his arms. He is very interested in working with us, so you better obey if you want to be the female lead. Zoe bit her lip because she knew how pragmatic the industry was. She had to rise to the top because she knew that, by hook or by crook. Soon, she smiled and poured out some wine. I'm sorry. Let me take a drink as an apology. She picked up the glass and drank it all. Zafir drove Leah home and parked outside her house. As she was getting out, he suddenly spoke. I'm sorry about what happened the other day. He was talking about getting dragged to the police station for the brawl. Leah smiled. There's no need to apologize. I really said some things that weren't nice to hear. I understand if you were unhappy about it. She remembered something and asked, by the way, did Daisy speak to you? Zafir paused. No, why? She was curious because she thought Daisy would speak to him, but she hadn't. She couldn't blame Daisy, though. She had her own family now, and even if she didn't contact Zafir, it was probably to avoid misunderstandings. Thanks for sending me home. I'm going to go inside now. She got out and walked into her home compound. After she walked away, Zafir picked up his phone and searched for Daisy's number but realized it was in his blocked list. His eyes grew dark. It was obvious that Zoe had touched his phone. At that moment, he received a text, and the person said that they were at the hotel. Zoe had gone willingly. Zafir smirked. This woman will do anything to get to where she wants. After a week, Zoe received resources to become an A-lister and attended events and parties with big names. She signed endorsement contracts with a few big brands and would get into the trending list every few days. There were rumors that she had obtained female lead roles that were backlogged until the middle of the next year. When an artist who started from a girl group received so many resources, people started to suspect if she had a financial supporter. Chapter 2424. It was soon the annual charity ball. The event was filled with celebrities. Zoe wore an haute couture dress and walked the red carpet with the big names. She quickly became the focus of the event. Daisy, who wasn't wearing haute couture, was compared to her. After walking into the event hall, Zoe walked over to Daisy. No way. The princess of the Goldman family isn't wearing haute couture? Oh well, I guess you won't be able to fit into haute couture if you're pregnant. Daisy wore a loose dress with a fur coat that could cover her belly. Even though it wasn't haute couture, that fur coat cost 5 figures. Daisy turned to look at her and calmly replied, "This is a charity ball, not a beauty pageant." Alright, just say you can't fit into the dresses. There's no need for excuses. Zoe stopped in front of her and crossed her arms. You're going to leave the industry after giving birth anyway. I'm looking forward to not having you around. Zoe happily walked away after saying that because she was imagining the scene of Daisy being angry and defeated. None of that mattered, however, because she now had a bright future in the industry. Even if Daisy returned postpartum, she would only end up with supporting roles. When she saw the media pointing their cameras at her, Zoe immediately smiled sweetly and showed off her voluptuous body. She turned around to look at Daisy and see how disappointed she was. Unexpectedly, Daisy wasn't even looking at her and was having a chat with the event organizers. Zoe's phone that was in her bag rang. She saw that Zafir's assistant was calling, so she picked up with a smile. Yes? Zoe, are you crazy? How could you wear haute couture to a charity event? You need to know when to draw the line, that person yelled right after she picked up. Among all the celebrities who attended the ball, only Zoe was in haute couture. People thought she was just there for the red carpet. She was drawing too much attention to herself compared to the other celebrities. Zoe ignored the yelling. Didn't Zeph say that I need to do what I have to become famous? So what if I'm trying to get more attention? The worst I can get is some mocking, but if I can become famous, I'm famous. The person called her dumb and hung up. After that, he called Zafir to report to him. Zoe has no brains. We're going to be in trouble if we're behind her fame. Zafir watched the event on his couch as he swirled the wine in his glass. I'm just giving her a chance to climb the ladder. What she does is her business. The assistant was surprised. You're not trying to make her famous? Zafir slowly sipped his wine. Do you know what a target is? Helping her to fame wasn't his main focus. She would start acting up when she had the illusion she was famous. Given her actions, she would soon become the industry's target and be shot down when she did something wrong. That was the price for threatening him. Meanwhile, when the event organizers asked everyone for a group picture, Zoe walked to the middle and wanted to get the best spot while ignoring everyone else. Daisy saw her doing that and was going to remind her, but she remembered something and didn't speak. She then walked aside. Chapter 2425. Daisy didn't remind her, but the others around her wouldn't have it. Zoe, it's a charity event, not a fashion show. I don't think you're the best person to be in the center. Not anyone could stand in the center. This was a charity event. The big names weren't even standing there, yet she did. No one would be fine with that. Zoe refuted, no one said anything, so who are you to talk about it? Come stand here too, if you're not happy about it. That made the artist's face drop. The organizers' higher-ups frowned and said something to the assistant. The assistant immediately sent someone over to check. Soon after that, the organizer suddenly requested them to be arranged based on the funds they raised. Those who did not raise any funds would have to stand in the back row. After that happened, everyone started talking about Zoe. Her face turned pale, because it was an awkward situation. They whispered to each other, she didn't raise any funds? The audacity to stand in the middle. Not only did she attend a charity event without raising funds, but she also dared to stand in the center. That's such a shameless thing to do. Zoe's shoulders shook while she grabbed the sides of her dress. The screen showed the amount raised by each celebrity, and most of them donated funds under their labels. Daisy had donated $9,500,000 in her own name and was the highest fundraiser. Zoe, who had not donated a cent, not only borrowed an haute couture dress to attend the event but even wanted to stand in the center. Everyone immediately started laughing at her. After the event, Daisy fixed her dress in the washroom when Zoe suddenly rushed in. Daisy Vanderbilt, you did that intentionally. Daisy paused, then turned to look at her. What was intentional? Zoe slammed her bag on the sink, and it made a loud noise. You knew what it meant to be standing in the middle, but didn't remind me. You wanted me to be the joke, didn't you? Daisy had been quiet when she walked to the center. She had been waiting for her to make a joke out of herself. Daisy laughed. Didn't someone remind you? Did you forget what you said to them? Zoe's face turned dark, because even though it was the truth, she still wanted to pin all the blame on Daisy. It's all your fault. Daisy rolled her eyes and didn't want to waste time arguing with her. She was walking away when Zoe grabbed her. You're feeling guilty, right? Do you feel happy now that I'm being laughed at? Daisy pushed her hand away. You need to see a psychiatrist. What did I do to you? Why do you have to keep showing up? I don't have time for this. Daisy left the washroom while Zoe glared at her from behind. She thought that Daisy just wanted to laugh at her. She was also her kryptonite in the industry because nothing good came out of being around her. The longer Zoe thought about it, the angrier she got. She rushed toward Daisy because she was not happy about any of that. Suddenly, someone yelled, Daisy. Daisy turned around, but Zoe tried to push her. She wasn't able to evade it, and the sudden force made her fall backward. As Daisy was going to hit the floor, someone rushed out, pushed Zoe away, grabbed Daisy, and pulled her into his arms. They both fell to the ground. When Zoe saw Zafir show up, she was stunned. Chapter 2426. Zafir helped Daisy to sit. Seeing her pale face, he asked, Are you all right, Daisy? Daisy did not say anything. Zafir turned around and looked gloomily at Zoe, causing her to take a few steps back in fear. She said, I didn't push her. She fell down herself. It wasn't my fault. Daisy suddenly got up from the floor. She walked toward Zoe and slapped her across the face, causing her head to turn sideways. Zoe froze. She touched her red, swollen cheek in disbelief and said, You slapped me? Just when she was going to retaliate, Daisy grabbed her wrist and kicked her, sending her plopping to the floor. Zoe screamed out in pain and said, Daisy, are you crazy? Zafir did not step in. Daisy looked at her. Am I crazy? If something happens to the kid in my womb, can you afford the consequences, Zoe? The red welt on Zoe's cheek was getting more and more prominent. She gnashed her teeth and said, Who knows if you really are pregnant or not? Daisy had never responded to the rumor that said she was pregnant. Nobody knew if she was really pregnant or not, and everyone was just speculating. Since Daisy had not admitted it, nobody dared to say anything. Daisy grabbed her by her collar and said with a dark expression, If I lose my kid, I'll make your life worse than death. I'll make you pay for everything you did today. Just wait for it. She pushed her away and turned around. Zafir stood there for a while, before leaving with Daisy. In the corner, a paparazzo caught Daisy slapping Zoe in her face on his camera. His eyes glowed with excitement as he was certain this piece of news would be a big hit. When they were in the car park, Zafir called out to Daisy. She stopped in her tracks, but did not turn her head around. He went in front of Daisy and asked, "Are you all right?" Daisy raised her head and said calmly, "I'm fine. You should go check out your girlfriend." Zafir frowned. "Girlfriend? Who is my girlfriend? Isn't Zoe your girlfriend?" "No. Who told you that she is my girlfriend?" "I don't care if she's your girlfriend or not. It's none of my business. I just want to thank you for saving me today, Zafir. I might have already lost my kid if it were not for you. But I won't let Zoe go so easily for what she did today. If she does something like this again next time, I won't go easy on her." Without waiting for Zafir to say anything, Daisy left without turning her head back. Zafir stood frozen stiff on the spot as disappointment filled him whole. He turned around to look at Daisy, and he did not know why but had a feeling that their relationship was beyond fixing. That's right. Both of them had changed. He was no longer his former self, and the same applied for Daisy. The next day, all social media platforms were filled with the news of Daisy slapping Zoe. The person who recorded the whole incident uploaded the video onto the internet. In the video, Daisy did not go easy on Zoe at all as she slapped her across her face with all her might. #honestly, don't you think Daisy is a bit overreacting? #. Zoe is a bitch. I've hated her since the first day. She has never done anything good, and she deserves it. #. This is so ridiculous. When Zoe criticized Daisy, everyone scolded her. But no one is saying anything when Daisy slapped Zoe across the face? What's going on with this world? #. Everyone thought the netizens would be criticizing Daisy, but in reality, most of the people were standing on Daisy's side. Then, Zoe published her injury and a report from the hospital on Facebook as evidence that Daisy had slapped her. Her fans were infuriated and asked her to report to the police. However, Zoe played the victim, saying on her Facebook that she would not report to the police as they would not be able to do anything against Daisy since she had a big background. Chapter 2427. The incident continued to develop on the internet, and everyone wanted Daisy to come out and say something about it. In Zafir's workshop, Zafir's assistant told Zoe to tell the truth. Sitting on the chair, Zoe refused to listen to him and said, "Why should I tell the truth? She was the one who slapped me across the face, so she should come and apologize to me." The assistant rubbed his temple and said, "Zoe, this is the last warning Mr. Gosling gives you. You should do as he says, before it's too late." Zoe rose to her feet and said, "Unless Daisy comes and apologizes to me. Or else, I won't back down." As soon as she finished speaking, Noce appeared outside of the door with his lawyer. "The one who should apologize to my wife is you." Zoe's expression changed. "What do you mean?" She took 2 steps back and looked at them warily. "Are you all going to help Daisy? I was the one who got slapped across the face. Why is everyone helping her? Is there no justice in this world?" Noce loosened his watch and looked at her coldly. "Do you deserve justice?" Zoe's face sank. Noce was Daisy's husband, so it went without saying that he was on her side. As if she thought of something, she sneered coldly. "I'm sure you don't know that your wife has been flirting with Zafir, right?" "What are you talking about, Zoe?" Zafir's assistant did not expect Zoe to be so brainless. How could she try to sow discord between Daisy and Noce while she was in Zafir's office? Did she not know that it would also bring bad consequences to Zafir? Upon seeing that Noce's face had turned dark, a triumphant smile crossed Zoe's face as she continued, "Do you know that Daisy has been pestering Zafir? Rather than poking your nose into my affairs, you should go back and look after your wife." Noce looked at Zoe coldly. After a short while, he chuckled. "Do you really think your petty trick will work on me?" As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his arm, and the bodyguards behind him opened the laptop. On the screen was the footage of the security camera outside the restroom. In the video, it was Zoe who had chased after Daisy and tried to push her. After that, Zafir showed up and grabbed Daisy before she fell to the floor. Then, Daisy went forward and slapped Zoe across the face. Zoe's face turned bloodless after she saw the recording. I've already published the recording on the internet. So shouldn't you be the one who apologizes to my wife? Zoe's shoulders trembled. Fine. I'll apologize to your wife. It's only an apology. I can always get my revenge on her afterward. But it's already too late. What do you mean? Zoe asked, looking at Noce in shock. Noce continued indifferently. You have targeted my wife several times. Even though my wife decided to forgive you each time, it doesn't mean that I'll forgive you too. He dusted his suit and chuckled. For the record, I'm someone who'll stop at nothing to achieve my goal. His eyes were cold, and Zoe felt a chill down her spine. She panicked and said, No. You can't do this to me. I didn't do anything wrong. Noce replied calmly, Really? Then what about the resources you gained by selling your own body? Zoe froze. She was trembling so much that she could not speak. Noce threw a stack of photos at her. A few photos were scattered on the floor, and those photos were unpleasant to look at. Even Zafir's assistant could not help himself and turned his head away. Zoe stumbled and fell to the couch. She felt as if her energy had left her. Her face contorted with anger and disgust as the painful memories resurfaced in her head. However, her reaction was totally different from what was shown in the photos. In the pictures, she seemed to be enjoying the process. Chapter 2428. The one thing in this world Zoe refused to face was her own desire that she kept in the deepest part of her heart. What Noce did was like a public execution. He had trampled her pride and self-esteem on the ground. Noce looked at his lawyer and asked, What's the punishment for prostitution? The lawyer pushed his eyeglasses and replied, Regardless of the location, it's inherently illegal to engage in sexual transactions with people to obtain remuneration benefits, and so forth. Although it doesn't constitute a crime, it's subject to detention for more than 10 days and less than 15 days, and a fine of 800 inch. Noce smiled at Zoe and asked, Do you have anything to say, Miss Markle? Zoe shook her head and shouted hysterically, No. I was forced to do it. It wasn't me. It wasn't my fault. Nobody cares whether you're forced or not. The police and the judge will only look at the evidence. Besides, didn't you already get what you wanted? So there's no way you can escape from this. This is just the beginning. Noce turned around and continued, It won't affect you if we just give you a warning. Since you take other people's tolerance for granted, I'll let you know the consequences of not behaving yourself. After he had finished speaking, he left with his men. He ran into Zafir in the corridor and stopped in front of him. There was a meaningful smile tugging at the corner of his lips as he said, What do you think about this show, Mr. Gosling? Zafir looked at him and asked, What are you trying to say? Noce went closer to him. He looked straight into his eyes calmly and continued, I let you off the hook last time, and since you protected Daisy and our baby this time, we're even now. I hope you can behave yourself as well, Mr. Gosling. Without waiting for Zafir to say anything, Noce walked away. Zafir pressed his lips tightly and walked into his office. Zoe was crying herself hoarse on the couch. When she saw Zafir, she threw herself in front of him and grabbed his hand. You'll help me, right? I know I'm wrong. Please, you're the only one who can help me. Zafir flung her hand away and said, What makes you think I'll help you? Zoe was stumped. Looking at the coldness in his eyes, she couldn't hold herself back anymore and lashed out at Zafir. You're the one who asked me to stay with them. If something happens to me, you won't be able to get away either. Zafir glanced at his assistant. After his assistant left, he slapped Zoe across the face, causing her to fall to the floor. Did I force you? Didn't you do it voluntarily? And now you're going to threaten me? Zafir grabbed her chin and continued. I thought you're a smart woman since you're willing to stop at nothing to set me up, but it seems like I was wrong. I don't know what makes you think you can wrap people around your little finger. Zoe trembled. She couldn't say anything. It was only now that she realized she had fallen into a trap. specifically prepared for her. She had been under the impression she was the queen who had everything under her control, but in reality, she was just a pawn that other people could sacrifice at any moment. Zafir released her and stood up straight. You think you're smart, but you're dumb as a rock. Even if Daisy doesn't rely on her family in the entertainment industry, you have no way to harm her, either. The reason the Goldmans don't do anything to you is that you're just a clown who doesn't deserve their attention at all. Do you really think you're that good and important? Don't you know what happened to Tiffany? Zoe sat, frozen stiff, on the floor. There were no tears in her eyes. She clenched her hand and gnashed her teeth tightly. She just couldn't accept it. She couldn't accept that Daisy could get the role she wanted without difficulty, while she had to give up on the role she had worked so hard for just because she did not have any family background. Chapter 2429. Zoe just wanted to stand at the top of the world and would stop at nothing to achieve her goal. She did not do anything wrong. Why was everyone just focusing on Daisy? Why did no one see her efforts? Everyone in the entertainment industry was a profit seeker, and she was just one of them. She wanted to get a share of the pie. She was ambitious. She did not do anything wrong, but she was just a victim of power in the end. She hated this world for its unfairness. Suddenly, she saw a pair of scissors on the table. When Zafir turned around, she dashed toward the table and picked up the scissor. When Zafir heard the commotion and turned around, Zoe charged at him and plunged the scissor deep into his stomach. This was something he did not expect, and his eyes were filled with shock. Zoe looked at him and grinned menacingly. Since you all want to destroy me, I'll bring you all down to hell with me. Zafir's assistant heard a thump from the office and felt something was not right. He hastily opened the door, and the first thing he saw was Zafir lying on the floor with a scissor sticking out of his stomach while Zoe's hands were filled with blood. He shouted, "Mr. Gosling! Quickly! Somebody help!" Zoe seized the chance and ran away. A group of netizens boycotted Zoe after the video was made public online. Some said she was a thief, while some even said she was a pest and cancer in the entertainment industry. Since many people were boycotting Zoe and due to the protest of Daisy's fans, the brands that originally cooperated with Zoe withdrew their endorsements, and others deleted their posts related to Zoe. Just when everyone thought that this was the end for Zoe, a piece of news dropped on them like a bombshell. Hashtag an actress named Markle is on the run after injuring a budding movie director. The police have now started an investigation. Hashtag. At Taylorton. Daisy was learning how to make a snack in the kitchen by watching a video. She was so focused that she didn't even notice Noce had returned. Noce walked up to her and hugged her from the back. He rested his chin on her head and said, "What kind of snack are you making?" Daisy said proudly, "After I learn how to make it, I can make it for our baby." "Let me teach you then." He chuckled and kissed her cheek. "No. You'll say I'm stupid if I can't do it." After that, she pushed him out of the kitchen and continued. "Go out. Don't disturb me." Noce shook his head and smiled. At that moment, Daisy's phone rang. She took off her gloves and went to the table to pick up her phone. It was a call from Leah. She answered the call and was stunned when Leah told her something. After she hung up the call, she clutched her phone tightly and turned around to look at Noce. Noce looked at her and asked, "What's wrong?" "Zoe stabbed Zafir." Daisy lowered her head. "Can I?" He walked toward her and caressed her cheek as if he knew what she was thinking. "Let me send you there." Daisy raised her head to look at him. "Are you not mad?" Noce was caught between tears and laughter as he pinched her cheek. "I'm not as unreasonable as you think." Noce sent Daisy to the hospital. When Daisy found Leah, she was standing outside of the operating room. "Leah." Leah turned her head around and looked at Daisy. "Daisy. How is he now?" asked Daisy. Leah shook her head. "He's still inside. I don't know how he is now, but I've already informed his family." Daisy frowned. Why would Zoe do something like that? Is she mad? Why would she stab Zafir with a pair of scissors? It's considered intentional assault. Leah lowered her head. I have no idea either. In any case, the police are investigating the matter now. Chapter 2430. Zafir. It was only then Patricia and Alexander arrived. Francisco and Naomi came with them as well. When Patricia saw Leah, she hurriedly walked up to her and asked, Leah, how is Zafir, and what the hell happened? Relax, Miss Gosling, Leah comforted. Zafir is still inside the operating room. I'm sure he'll be fine. As for what happened, we'll have to wait until he wakes up. Patricia covered her mouth and sobbed. Alexander grabbed her into his arms and said, Don't worry. Our son will be all right. I told him that he shouldn't join the entertainment industry, but he didn't listen. Patricia was devastated when she learned what had happened to her son. She was once a famous actress in the entertainment industry as well, so she knew better than anyone else how dangerous it was in the entertainment industry. Suddenly, she noticed Daisy, and her expression changed slightly. It's you. Mrs. Gosling, it has been a long time. Daisy nodded and greeted her out of politeness. However, Patricia did not respond and said indifferently, That isn't necessary. You don't have to greet me since you're the daughter of the Goldmans. My son didn't listen to me and insisted on entering the entertainment industry because of you. I hope you'll stay away from my son in the future. Patricia-Alexander wanted to say something, but Patricia cut him short. Don't try to persuade me. I'm doing this for my son's own good. Daisy pressed her lips thin and did not say anything. Naomi walked over and said, Mom, you can't blame Daisy on this. It's Zafir's choice, after all. Yes, he's the one who made the choice. Patricia took a deep breath, but it did nothing to quell the pain in her heart. But did he make the choice for himself? Did he ever think of himself from the beginning? Zafir had sacrificed himself and made the choice in order to stay closer to her. Now that something had happened to her son, it went without saying that she could not stay calm at all. At the end of the day, it was a mistake for her son to enter the entertainment industry. I'm sorry, Mrs. Gosling. Daisy wanted to say something but did not know what to say at all. In the end, she could only apologize to Patricia. Patricia continued harshly. You don't need to apologize. You did nothing wrong. I just hope that you can stay away from my son. The green light in front of the operating room lit up. Soon, the doctor came out. Patricia pushed Alexander away and rushed toward the doctor. Doctor, how is my son doing? The doctor took off his face mask and said, The patient lost too much blood, but the good thing is that he was sent to the hospital in time. Now his condition has become stable. He'll rest for some period and is forbidden from strenuous exercise to facilitate his recovery. Patricia let out a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. The rest of the people heaved out a sigh of relief as well. Just when they were going to see Zafir, Daisy left without telling anyone. Leah noticed that she was missing, so she turned her head around only to see that she was leaving. While Daisy was waiting for the elevator, Leah called out to her, Daisy. She turned her head around and said with a smile, I'm fine, but I'm not going to see Zafir anymore. I hope you won't mind what Mrs. Gosling said. Leah sighed. She has high expectations of Zafir. When Zafir chose to enter the entertainment industry, she was disappointed for a long while before she finally accepted reality. Now that this thing happened. I know, said Daisy. Everything is good as long as he's fine. You should go to see him. I'll go back first. She walked into the elevator, and the door closed. When Daisy came out of the entrance, she saw Noce was waiting for her in front of his car. He was wearing a black trench coat, looking like a shadow in the chilly wind.